So it's a Monday, and this Friday is a memorial in Flagstaff for Steve Gibbs. And I didn't budget or plan properly, and I won't be able to make that trip to be there with y'all. And I guess I just wanted to, if I were to be there, these are the things I would want to say. Steve Gibbs was one of the kindest, gentlest, most generous men who loves Jesus. He loved Jesus a lot. I first met him at Summit Expedition. It probably would have been 78 or 79, because I was pretty involved by then and was working with Tim Hansel, kind of as an aide or gopher or whatever, whatever you want to call me. Intern is actually, I think, what I was. But I met Steve up at Summit's base camp in Bass Lake. And he came in, and he's just kind of a bigger than life guy in many ways. One of the guys who really helped support Summit, and we spent a bunch of time talking. And during those conversations, we had a lot in common, and the conversations continued. And I ended up moving to Flagstaff because Steve invited me to be part of kind of doing an extension of Summit Expedition. And to work in community. I'd lived in community with the Summit crew. We tried making a go of it with Steve Dillard and Boucher, Jim Boucher, and some others, and had a lot of discussions. I mean, I spent several summers working with Summit, and Steve was there. And after hanging out and having some incredible conversations, those kind you can only have when you're just really simpatico. So I went to Flagstaff because I was in I would go anywhere mode. I had my 67 van, and I was basically living out of that, and would stay with my parents or stay with friends. And so when I went to Flagstaff, I lived in the basement of the house that they were building, which was really an incredible house. It was a beautiful, beautiful house. A really good friend of mine, Peter Edlin, worked on it, and it was just this incredible, house that kind of took over. And we talked a lot about community and everything. And so when I got there, I met people like David Minnie and that whole crew, the Flagstaff Christian Fellowship crew, and became part of that, and got pretty actively involved in the church there because God kind of stuck me. And but early on, I was a pretty big basket case when I got to Flagstaff. I'd gotten into some really strange stuff, and Steve was very, very instrumental. I mean, like desperately instrumental in helping me rebuild my life. Got me to the Julian Center, where I had a chance to study under Josh McDowell, and Hansel was involved in that. And so, I went through that program and came back, and I got involved in Flagstaff Christian Fellowship, and with David Minnie and others, we formed Outdoor Life, and it was just this incredible season of we ran river trips, and Steve made sure I had a ski pass once because I could witness to kids on chairlifts, and they couldn't get away. So I spent a season, skiing for Jesus. It was just an incredible time of life and a lot of hope. We had a conversation with a number of people where we looked at 65 acres that were landlocked in the Forest Service with one of the original wells in the Flagstaff area, and talked about doing community on that. It was a big area, with open fields sticking off in a few directions around a big central field. And we were going to, build a retreat center, and, just this wonderful dream of providing a place for burned out missionaries and people that were needing, rest and recovery. It was an incredibly gorgeous place, and I don't remember exactly how it fell apart. It really, it went kind of sideways. And I even wrote a letter to Steve, but I may even open that. I've had it all these years. I mailed it to myself because I was afraid there would be some backlash, and I had concerns about the direction that Shakar Christian Ministries is going. I spent a lot of time at the Lion and the Lamb. We used to call it Lion in the Lamb, and Joel Zinzig drew a picture of a lamb with a lion's tail sticking out. We thought that was funny, Lion in the Lamb, instead of, yeah. I was around that bookstore. We had officers in back there. There's just an incredible season of discussion and inquiry and studying Sojourner stuff, and can we live in community, and how do we do that? And I was broken pretty hard by God during a lot of that. because he really took me to task in that I wasn't supposed to go hide in the woods and live community. We were supposed to live community right smack in the middle of everybody. You know, I do wish we'd gotten that place. It would have been an incredible opportunity. But Steve was a visionary and someone always kind of chasing after things and willing to help anybody. I mean, I literally watched him at Summit give somebody the shirt off his back. Somebody said, "Hey, man, that's a really nice shirt." And Steve said, "You like it?" And he took it off and gave it to him. You know, that was kind of a picture of Steve. And because of what I was going through and the involvements I had, Steve was having a hard time. You know, I lived in a basement with a family of people that I really loved, the Gibbs family, and I remember, you know, I remember one day in particular kind of summed up what a lot of what I saw. You know, where Steve had that railroad job and he had 1 hour to get there from the time his pager went off, and we went to a matinee movie with his kids. I went along. They included me in the family. I mean, it was like I was Uncle Clay. I felt like I was actually part of the family. He made me part of the family, and you know, Bev and her graciousness, and it was just incredible. And I remember the look on the kid's face and on Bev's face when his pager went off when we were watching the movie. I don't remember the movie, but I do remember Steve just, you know, said his goodbyes and left, and the look on their faces, you know, was one I saw a lot. I mean, the job paid a lot of money, and he poured a lot of that money into the house, and I remember the deep regrets he had about it. He wished he'd had less house and more time with his kids, wouldn't have had to walk away. And life changed. He was going in a different direction. You know, I got that letter I wrote him, and I'll do an addendum on this to talk about some other stuff. But during I lost track. Steve, we ran in different circles, and then I'd heard he'd gotten a divorce, and it was just an incredibly hard thing. We just lost touch, and it wasn't until 2014 when Larry Hale went home to be with the Lord, and I made it to Flagstaff for his memorial service. Steve and I reconnected, and I got to spend several hours hanging out with him and talking to him, and he did his usual Steve thing, where he got very generous about some very special things. And when we reconnected, you know, we stayed in touch, and we were able to talk through some of what happened and what he'd been through. And that's when, you know, then is when he told me that he'd been dealing with bipolar and depression, which made a lot of things suddenly, you know, bounce into clarity of what happened and how it happened. And it was like we picked up a friendship that we literally lost for almost 25 years, 20 years. Yeah. And it kept in regular touch. I mean, we did it, you know, via Facebook and, you know, texts, and, you know, just keeping in touch about what was going on. And one of the plans we'd come up with is that he was going to come out here this summer and check it out. And we were, you know, he was going to bring a friend of his maybe and just come out, and we'd hang out and spend some time. And he was thinking of moving, and, you know, but I was just really looking forward to seeing him. And the last few contacts I had with him, I knew he was hurting. I mean, he said he was. And it was, we were supposed to have gotten together. And when I got the message that Steve had died, I had a sinking feeling. I knew what had happened, because he told me previously that his meds were off, and the depression was really hard, and his body was falling apart, and he couldn't do things. And Steve was always the guy looking for the pony. You know, you put him in a room full of horse manure, and he'd come out smiling and laughing, saying he almost found the pony that time, you know. And he had a capacity for just trying to stay optimistic, but the last few contacts I had with him, that was gone. It was like something was gone. and it was hard. It was really hard because yeah, I got